Hey guys, welcome back to our YouTube channel, Mastering the Wedding Photography Biz.
I'm Hunter.
And I'm Sarah.
And in today's video, we are talking about one of the most common contract mistakes that we see almost every one of our new photography students making. Not understanding the difference between a retainer and a deposit.
So, if you don't want to make that same mistake that could cost you literally thousands of dollars, you need to keep watching this video.
So for starters, let's talk about the difference between a deposit and a retainer. Now, a deposit is a first payment made, from someone who's buying something to someone who's selling something that sort of secures that purchase, whether it's a good like a TV or a service like wedding photography. Now, it's typically some percentage of the total price, and once the transaction is complete, after the wedding day or once you have the TV, the deposit is applied towards that final payment. Or in the case that the sale falls through, the deposit is refunded.
So a good example of this would be like when you're buying a car. Unless you were going to walk into the dealership, write them a check, and then roll out with the full amount of the car, you were usually
and
required...
if you can do that, ball out.
I mean,
by
yeah,
all
ball
means.
out. I mean, maybe ball out. But you're usually required to put down a deposit while you get a loan to pay for the car. If the loan is secured, then the deposit goes towards the purchase of the car, whereas if the loan falls through, you will get the deposit back.
Now, on the other hand, a retainer or retainer fee is usually paid by a client to someone who provides a service in order to secure their ongoing service over some period of time. So a retainer is also paid up front, but instead of just being, a portion of the total amount, it's really about ensuring that the service provider is available to the client throughout the duration of their project. And this is true whether the client is reaching out to that service provider all the time or they literally never reach out to the service provider from the minute the job starts until the minute that it's finished. And because of this, because the retainer is about securing availability over time of a project, it's usually considered non-refundable as they're used to really cover the time and energy that the service provider puts towards that client's job.
Yep. So an example here would be like if you hire a lawyer to represent you in a legal matter, you may be required to pay a retainer fee up front in order to just secure their services. And then you may be on the hook for additional fees just depending on how much time they spend working on your case.
Now, let's talk about where this becomes relevant to photographers. Now, hopefully, if a client reaches out to you to book with you and they sign a contract, hopefully you understand that you want them to have some skin in the game, right? You want them to have some sort of initial investment, because if you're going to give them a date on your calendar and start turning away other potential jobs and other leads for that same date, then you want your client to have some incentive to actually show up and pay that full amount so that they can do what they hired you for, or so that you can do what they hired you for. Yes. And so that they can get the great photos and so you can get paid.
Yep, so collecting some sort of money up front is super important. If the client stands to lose some amount of money if they cancel, they are more likely to actually show up and have their photos taken.
And we think that this is true literally no matter what kind of photography you do. So if you're a portrait photographer, collecting money up front ensures that people aren't just going to go out and book a handful of photographers for the same session and then just decide, once they get a little closer, sort of last minute, who they actually want to work with. And also make sure people aren't hiring you and then later deciding whether or not they actually want the job in the first place. But you're going to get people who are actually committed to doing the portrait session with you.
Because guys, it is super frustrating to schedule a portrait session 30 or 60 days out, maybe even more, to turn away other opportunities to make money on that date, plan your whole week around that session, only to have them cancel at the last minute, and then you have literally nothing to show for it.
We once scheduled our Thanksgiving holiday plans around a portrait session. We were in the early days of our business and really needed the money for every job we can get. And we literally planned who we were going to see from our family around a session that was supposed to happen the day after Thanksgiving. And there ended up being some sort of family problem and they canceled the session and we had nothing to show for it, right? And that can be really frustrating as portrait photographers, but honestly, as a wedding photographer, it can be devastating, from a financial perspective, especially for popular dates like Saturdays during our busy wedding season. We might get 5 or even 10 leads for the same exact wedding day. And as photographers, obviously you can only be in one place on a given date.
So if we say we booked, the very first person who reached out to us about the third Saturday in October, we turned away 9 other couples for that date. And then the month before the wedding, the first couple who reached out to us, they reached out again and canceled their wedding or decided they changed their minds and want a different photographer. then we would have turned away the potential to make our full rate with all of those couples and all of those potential jobs.
And we would have literally $0 to show for it if we weren't collecting some sort of money up front. And honestly, as a wedding photographer, if they cancel their wedding, 30, 60, even 90 days before the wedding, the chances of us rebooking that date at our full price, a full day wedding, it's basically zero at that point. We have missed the opportunity to make any money on that date.
Yep. So at this point, we have hopefully convinced you that you need to be collecting something up front, but it really matters whether you do a deposit or a retainer.
Because like we mentioned at the start of this video, deposits are really thought of as the first payment towards a total purchase. So if a client cancels their wedding or calls off their portrait session, you're usually obligated to refund that deposit. And so in the end, if it's completely refundable, what's the difference between collecting it and not collecting anything at all, right? And so Sarah and I, honestly, for this reason, look at deposits as basically not much better than useless.
Yeah, whereas on the other hand, in most places, retainers are not considered refundable. And to be extra safe, everywhere that we refer to our retainer in our contract, we specifically call it a non-refundable retainer. We make it very clear to our clients upfront, both verbally as well as in our written contract, that if they cancel their wedding or portrait session for whatever reason, we are going to keep their non-refundable retainer as damages.
And here's what we mean by that. As wedding photographers, we are going to make all of our money from the entire year on just a handful of dates. And so if you only shoot 15 weddings a year and one of those is suddenly gone from your books, that's 7% of your income gone. And that's not to mention all the work that you do as part of their wedding team in the days and the months leading up to it. And so by the time they cancel, you may have done a huge amount of work for them already.
So, in the event that one of our couples does make the heartbreaking decision to call off their engagement and cancel their wedding, we won't also have to worry about paying our bills that month. And since it would likely be too late to rebook that date, at least keeping some percentage of the fee is better than keeping nothing.
Now, hopefully, this is obvious, but Sarah and I are wedding photographers, right? We are not lawyers, we are not accountants, so we have to give the disclaimer, always have your contracts reviewed by a legal professional.
But if you are in the earliest days of your portrait or wedding photography business and want to learn from more experienced photographers like us how to initially set up your business, we would love to let our years of experience running multiple businesses actually go to work for you.
And that's why a few years ago, we created our Photography Business Basics workshop, which is currently for sale on our website. Now, if you want to learn more about the best way to officially and legally establish your business, as well as how to navigate things like business bank accounts and insurances, taxes, and so much more, then check out the link in the description of this video to learn more about that, as well as all of our other workshops.
Yeah, because guys, being a professional photographer is about so much more than just taking pretty photos. And even if all you wanted to learn about was what percentage we ask for in our non-refundable retainer, or if you want to learn about how we manage payment plans and work those into our contracts, that alone would be worth the price of this workshop.
Not to mention all of the other things that we go over in this 2-hour-long workshop. So again, if you wanted to learn a little bit more about how to legally establish a legitimate business, as well as our tips on all of these other beginner business strategies, check out the link in the description to learn more.
But either way, we will see you next week.
Guys, thank you so much for watching. By the way, if you want to continue getting more great content from us, learning to take better images and run a successful wedding photography business, in addition to liking and subscribing, we would also encourage you to join our Facebook community, Mastering the Wedding Photography Biz with Hunter and Sarah.
In that group, we are building a free community of just other photographers who are also building their photography businesses and helping each other out along the way.
And of course, you should also like and subscribe because those things are good for the algorithms. Thanks, fam.
Bye.
See you guys.